Hey guys, let's get more news about Dallas, but first, don't forget to subscribe and leave your like. Cowboys blockbuster trade proposal pairs star number 2 WR with CeeDee Lamb. One thing that always stands true about NFL trade proposals at this time of year, they do not necessarily have to make sense, especially if they involve the Cowboys. So, with news thumping down on the NFL on Tuesday suggesting that Raiders star receiver Davante Adams could be had in a trade before next month's deadline, it only made sense that Adams would be linked to Dallas. Even if, truly, it does not make much sense. After all, the Cowboys' problems with the current roster have been repeatedly exposed in the first month of the season, and while the receivers have not been great, that is not the unit most would expect to see addressed in the unlikely event of a trade. Defensive line, sure. Edge rushers, given the injury situation? Yes. Running backs? Linebackers? Absolutely, help wanted. But, at Bleacher Report, NFL analyst Christopher Knox has the Cowboys attempting to improve by strengthening an area that is already a strength. Here's how the proposed trade looks. Theoretically, the second-rounder would become a first-rounder if the Cowboys make a deep playoff run, something they've been unable to do in the last 30 years. Would they trade a first-rounder for a trip to the NFC Championship game? Maybe. Here's how Knox sees it breaking down. Dallas may have to win with its offense for the foreseeable future. That may be a problem because the team lacks reliable receiver depth behind CeeDee Lamb and has one of the worst rushing attacks in the NFL. Trading for Adams would give Dak Prescott a top-tier perimeter receiver opposite Lamb and would reunite Adams with head coach Mike McCarthy. In this hypothetical scenario, the threshold for flipping a conditional second-round pick into a first might be high. Dallas has shown that it can get to the playoffs. Winning multiple postseason games is now the goal, making an appearance in the NFC title game a sensible condition for the first-round pivot. To sweeten the deal, Dallas could include third-string quarterback Trey Lance. It would be tough to make this work, roster-wise, because pairing Adams with Lamb gives the Cowboys two alpha receivers to deal with only one ball. The Cowboys do need a number 2, but Adams is not a number 2. Assuming they could put egos aside, though, we've already heard team owner Jerry Jones cry poverty when it comes to adding star players. Squeezing in Adams' $25 million cap hit this year, part of a 5-year $140 million contract with the Raiders, would require the Raiders to take on a lot more money than they'd like. The Cowboys could get out of Adams' contract after this season. Moving Lance, though, as part of the deal would be a bonus, because it would allow the Cowboys to get out of the remainder of the $5.3 million they owe him while also allowing the organization to move on from what turned out to be an ill-advised move when they brought in Lance in the first place. Swapping him as an add-on in a Davante Adams deal allows Jones to neatly wipe the egg off his face. Still, that's not enough of a reason to move on Adams. The Cowboys have multiple units that are dumpster fires just now. They'll need to focus on putting out those fires first. Cowboys steal practice squad player from Bengals that they could have used. The defensive line has been an issue for the Cincinnati Bengals so far this season. The team has struggled to stop the run, and also to generate pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Injury issues have certainly played a part in the team's struggles on the D-line, as key contributors like B.J. Hill and Sheldon Rankins have been forced to miss time with various ailments. Cam Sample is out for the season with a torn Achilles tendon, and Myles Murphy is on injured reserve and has yet to play in 2024. So, it's safe to say that the Bengals could use some additional depth on the defensive line, which is what makes the following news so surprising, and probably somewhat frustrating for Bengals fans. According to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, the Dallas Cowboys are signing defensive end K.J. Henry off of the Bengals practice squad. Henry is a second-year player who appeared in 10 games for the Commanders last season and recorded 19 total tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 2 quarterback hits, 2 passes defended and 1.5 sacks. The hashtag Cowboys are signing pass rusher KJ Henry to a 2-year deal, active roster, off the hashtag Bengals practice squad. Per sources, Henry had 1.5 sacks last year for Washington, help on the way for depleted Cowboys pass rush. Henry was released by Washington at the end of August and quickly claimed by Cincinnati. He played 18 total snaps for the Bengals this season, with 7 of those coming on special teams. Now, he projects to get a larger role with the Cowboys, who are also dealing with some injuries on their defensive line. Henry isn't a proven game-changer or anything, but he is a young edge rusher with some decent potential, and given Cincinnati's struggles and injuries on the defensive line this season, Henry seems like a guy the team would have wanted to keep around, and someone who could potentially earn some more on-field opportunity. For what it's worth, Henry seems excited about the move, as he took to Twitter, now X, after the news was announced to share a post that consists of smiley face emojis and cowboy hats. Blockbuster trade proposal sends Davante Adams to Cowboys for QB and pick. The Las Vegas Raiders' good feelings stemming from their Week 4 win over the Cleveland Browns have quickly dissipated. Star wide receiver Davante Adams has requested a trade, and it appears the team could be willing to grant his request. There should be no shortage of teams around the NFL that are interested in Adams, but according to an October 1st X post from ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Raiders are looking for a second-round pick and more. That asking price will only be palatable to contending teams. Christopher Knox of Bleacher Report pitched a trade that would send Adams to the Dallas Cowboys for quarterback Trey Lance and a conditional second-round pick. In this hypothetical scenario, the threshold for flipping a conditional second-round pick into a first might be high, Ballantyne wrote in an October 1st column. Dallas has shown that it can get to the playoffs. Winning multiple postseason games is now the goal, making an appearance in the NFC title game a sensible condition for the first-round pivot. To sweeten the deal, Dallas could include third-string quarterback Trey Lance. For the Raiders, the Cowboys make sense as a trade partner as they'd get Adams out of the AFC. Lance doesn't sweeten the pot much as he still hasn't shown he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. At this point, there's really no reason for the Raiders to keep Adams. Even if they can earn a wild card playoff spot, they aren't competing for a Super Bowl with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. Adams' salary cap hit jumps to $44.1 million next season, so the Raiders were likely going to move on from him after the season. If they were to trade him in the offseason, his value would likely be lower. In fact, the longer the team waits, the lower his value will be. The Raiders should be highly motivated to get a deal done quickly. They don't need Adams to be a distraction. He's a very good player who has broken 1,000 receiving yards for the team in back-to-back seasons, but a young rebuilding team doesn't have a need for a wide receiver who will be 32 in December. When the Raiders traded for Adams during the 2022 offseason, they were coming off a playoff berth and had just hired Josh McDaniels as head coach. Quarterback Derek Carr was coming off a strong season, and the hope was that reuniting him with Adams would be a recipe for success. That wasn't the case. The Raiders won 6 games in Adams' first season, and the team decided to release Carr. They decided to sign Jimmy Garoppolo to be the starting quarterback, which turned out to be a disaster. Las Vegas could only muster 8 wins last season. This season hasn't gone much better as the team is 2-2 and was recently blown out by the Carolina Panthers. Adams didn't suit up against the Browns in Week 4 and the Raiders won, which shows they don't need the wide receiver to win. This was a failed experiment from the beginning, and it's best for the Raiders to cut their losses right now. And you, fan? What do you think of the situation of Davante Adams? Leave your opinion in the comments.